She had no choice: leave her sick child home alone or risk her job by bringing him to work. She chose her child, and for that she lost everything, until someone new walked through the door. Delia Reyes, a 32-year-old single mother, juggled her life with the precision of a clockmaker. Her world revolved around her 7-year-old son, Milo, curly-haired, olive-skinned, bright-eyed, and asthmatic. On this rainy morning in the town of Evermore Pines, Milo woke up wheezing. Her sitter had canceled last minute. Delia, an administrative coordinator at a mid-sized logistics firm called Vilcrest Systems, was out of options. If she stayed home, she'd lose her job. If she left Milo alone, she risked his health. So, with trembling hands, she packed his inhaler, snacks, and a blanket into her tote and brought him along. Delia set Milo up with headphones and a coloring book under her desk. She tried to focus, answering phones and sorting documents, but it didn't take long for upper management to notice. Her supervisor, Mr. Tallon, a stiff man in his 50s with thinning hair and steel-rimmed glasses, called her in. She explained softly, apologetically, "I had no one else today. He won't bother anyone." Tallon didn't hear her humanity, only policy. "This is a workplace, not a daycare," he said, eyes cold. "You violated company code." That same afternoon, she was handed a termination letter. Delia didn't cry until she was out in the parking lot. Rain fell steadily as she clutched Milo close. He asked, "Did I do something wrong?" That broke her. "No, baby, you didn't." But inside, she battled shame and fear. Rent was due, groceries were running low, her pride was wounded, no job meant no stability. And Evermore Pines wasn't exactly brimming with options for single mothers with limited savings and no backup plan. Inside Vilcrest, employees murmured. Some thought the firing was cruel, others said rules were rules. Human Resources was silent. The company's founder had stepped down weeks ago, and interim leadership was faceless. The office was a place of fear, not trust. Morale dipped. But that was about to change, because on Monday morning a new nameplate appeared outside the executive suite: Jackson Ellery, Regional Director. Jackson Ellery didn't come from boardrooms. He came from the floor, from distribution centers, late-night shift changes, and hands-on leadership. Known for his calm demeanor and people-first mindset, he noticed the tension in the air the moment he stepped into Vilcrest. By midweek, he'd met with every team, shook every hand, and read every HR report, including Delia's termination file. Something about it stopped him. A sticky note on the file simply read, "Policy breach, no further action." Jackson raised an eyebrow and called in Hour. "Who was Delia Reyes?" Jackson asked in a meeting. Silence. HR mumbled about protocols. "Did she ever have issues before? No. Was she late often? No. So she brought her kid once in an emergency and got fired?" More silence. Jackson closed the file. "We don't fire people for being human." That night he found Delia's LinkedIn profile. Her resume was solid, her references glowed, and her last post was a photo of her son in a hoodie that read, "Mommy's Hero." Jackson made a decision. Delia was folding laundry when her phone rang. She almost didn't answer, thinking it was another bill collector. But a warm voice on the line said, "Ms. Reyes, this is Jackson Ellery, the new director at Vilcrest." She froze. "I read what happened. I'm sorry. I'd like to meet you." Shocked, she agreed. They met the next day at a quiet cafe. Jackson listened as she explained everything. He didn't interrupt. At the end, he said, "You didn't deserve that. I'd like to offer you your position back with a raise." Delia returned to Vilcrest the following week. The moment she stepped through the doors, the office seemed different. People smiled more. HR staff greeted her kindly. Jackson personally introduced her to the team. "This is Ms. Reyes. She's not only returning, she's helping us build a better workplace." Her heart thudded in disbelief. She had left here in shame. Now she was back with purpose. Milo, healthy again, had waved from the window that morning, proud of his mom. One of Jackson's first initiatives was a family-first flexibility program. Emergency childcare support, remote work options, compassion leave protocols. He called it human-centered policy. Delia was asked to serve on the employee advisory board, her insight invaluable. Some managers grumbled behind closed doors. Jackson responded, "Leadership without empathy is just control." Slowly, minds began to change. The atmosphere at Vilcrest began to shift. People lingered in hallways, exchanging genuine greetings. One team member brought her toddler during a snowstorm without fear. Another shared how the new policies let him care for his aging mother. Productivity didn't decline, it soared. Trust had replaced fear, and in the heart of it all stood Jackson and Delia. Delia didn't expect to see Mr. Tallon again, but fate had a way of forcing reckonings. He was in the break room pouring lukewarm coffee when she stepped in, his back straightened awkwardly, guilt radiating from his posture. "Ms. Reyes," he muttered. She responded with a nod, unsure where it was headed. He turned slowly. "I read about the changes you and Mr. Ellery implemented. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I enforced the rule, but I never stopped to ask why you broke it." Delia let the silence linger. "What matters is what we do after we know better," she said gently. Talon nodded and looked down, older than she remembered. "Thank you for showing us better." It was the first time she truly felt the past had healed. When Delia walked onto that stage at the National Business Ethics Forum, her knees trembled. The room held hundreds, executives, leaders, policymakers. Her hands clutched the smooth wood of the podium, a plaque tucked under her arm with her name engraved in gold. Employee Advocate of the Year. She took a breath and smiled. "I never imagined I'd be standing here," she began. "I was fired because I chose my son. And then someone chose to see me as more than a mistake." Her voice cracked slightly, but she pressed on. "If leadership isn't rooted in empathy, then it's not leadership, it's compliance." Applause thundered. Cameras flashed. But to Delia, the only moment that mattered was when Milo's tiny hand waved from the front row, eyes gleaming with pride. Later that night, with her award on the kitchen counter beside cooling spaghetti, Milo handed her a folded paper. "I made something for you," he said shyly. It was a drawing in bright crayon colors. One figure wore a red cape, a crown labeled Mom. Beside her stood a tall figure with a giant heart on his chest labeled Mr. Jackson. Above it, in shaky kid letters, "My mom is a hero." Delia sat down, overcome. That simple image meant more than the plaque. It was validation from the one person who mattered most. She framed it and placed it on her desk the next day, not as decoration, but as a declaration. This was the reason she fought, for her son's stability, safety, and hope. The first Empathy in Action workshop was modest, just 20 attendees in a borrowed conference room. Jackson opened with a story from his youth, about his own mother working 3 jobs and being denied a promotion because she was too emotional. Delia followed, detailing how her firing turned into a spark for change. They didn't lecture, they shared. Slowly, hands began to raise. Managers admitted they'd failed to ask why their employees struggled. Others asked how to start fresh. By the end, tissues had been passed around, and one executive said, "This should be required for anyone who leads people." Word spread. The workshops grew. Soon, companies in other states were calling, eager to bring the movement in-house. Empathy wasn't just inspiring, it was contagious. The pushback came swiftly. One of the senior executives from corporate headquarters arrived unannounced, his polished shoes echoing through the hallways. In the conference room, he slammed a report on the table. "These family-first changes, flex hours, childcare stipends, emergency leave, they're expensive." Jackson didn't flinch. "And they're working." The exec raised an eyebrow. "This is a business, not a charity." Delia, seated beside Jackson, leaned forward. "Then maybe it's time businesses learn that compassion is profitable." She clicked to the next slide. Metrics showing increased productivity, better retention, and a 20% reduction in burnout-related sick leave. "We didn't lose money," she added. "We saved people." The room fell silent. The board reviewed the data. For once, the numbers spoke the language of humanity. The program stayed, stronger than ever. On a Friday morning that felt like any other, Delia walked into Jackson's office, not expecting the surprise waiting on his desk. An offer letter. "We've created a new role," he said. "Director of Employee Advocacy. You've already been doing the work, now it's official." Her mouth opened, then closed, stunned. "I don't have a degree in HR," she said cautiously. Jackson smiled. "You have a PhD in lived experience. That's more than enough." The salary increase would allow her to pay off old debts, enroll Milo in a better school, and finally breathe. But more than that, it meant she would have the authority to help others who might have slipped through the cracks. This wasn't just a promotion, it was a purpose. She accepted with teary eyes. Delia's life changed in steady, subtle ways. She moved out of her cramped studio and into a sunny 2-bedroom apartment with a view of the park. Milo had his own room now, painted with space decals and stocked with asthma-friendly air filters. Delia enrolled in evening classes to study social work, inspired to do more for working parents like herself. She spoke on community panels, sharing her story with grace and strength. No longer surviving on fumes, she was thriving on purpose. The shadows of her firing had long since lifted. In their place stood confidence, stability, and a belief that she and anyone else deserved dignity in the workplace. Ren lashed against the glass as a new hire, Ren, stepped into Vilcrest's lobby, soaked and trembling. She held a baby on one hip and a bag of formula in the other. "I'm sorry, I didn't know what else to do," she whispered to the receptionist. Delia happened to be passing by. She recognized the fear in Ren's voice. She approached slowly, smiling warmly. "It's all right, we've all been there." "You're not in trouble, you're safe here." She gently led Ren to the soft seating corner outfitted with toys and blankets. Ren broke down in tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Delia knelt beside her and said, "I once thought I'd be punished for being a mom too, but someone helped me. And now I get to help you." It was a full circle moment. The culture had changed and it was now self-sustaining. A journalist named Alina Jarrell attended one of the workshops. She was supposed to write a piece on corporate culture. What she found instead was a movement. Her article, titled "From Fired to Fierce: How One Mother Changed the Rules," exploded across social media. In it, she quoted Delia's speech, featured a photo of Jackson and Delia side by side, and called Vilcrest a model for modern ethics. The story went viral. Requests flooded in for interviews, keynotes, and consultancy visits. Other companies began implementing their own empathy-based protocols. What had started as a moment of pain had become a national conversation about how we treat working parents. Delia, once silenced by shame, had become a symbol of strength, and her voice now echoed in boardrooms across the country. Years passed. Milo stood tall behind a podium at his high school graduation, his curls tamed but his spirit still bright. "I want to thank my mom," he began. "She stood up when she was knocked down. She taught me that courage is choosing what's right even when it costs you." The crowd murmured with emotion. "And I want to thank Mr. Ellery for proving that leadership can be both strong and kind." Delia sat in the front row, eyes glistening. Jackson, older now but just as steady, nodded beside her. After the ceremony, Milo hugged her tightly. "You changed everything," he said. She smiled through tears. "No, baby, you changed me." The legacy they had built wasn't in awards or articles, it was in the life they rebuilt together, and in the kindness they paid forward. And it all began with one act of courage, and one man who chose to listen. This was the story of a woman who lost everything, and gained more than she dreamed, all because someone chose kindness over policy. If stories like this inspire you, touch your heart, or remind you of the power we all have to lead with love, subscribe for more real, powerful stories of humanity, leadership, and second chances.